Welcome, guys. Week 1 in the End Zone podcast. Firstly, thank you for listening. That's how I'm going to start this. We are about to begin our first podcast. It is going to be an NFL podcast direct from the UK. We're going to be running news, knowledge, bit of information, and probably most importantly, we're going to be rounding off every game week with our own invention of either... We're not too sure what to call it yet, but we'll find a way. It's either going to be a 2-minute drill on each game played per week, or we're going to be on the clock. But either way, we're going to be rounding up each game that's been played. There's myself, Dom. I'm heading this podcast, and I am also joined by my good friend across the table from me, Dave.
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Dave. Thanks. How are you?
Tired.
Let's get this.
Been not watching football.
Yeah, me too. Intensely watching football. We may as well get right to it, and we'll just give you a little bit of a preview of how we're going to break these games down. But last night was the big game, the opener, the start of the 2021 season. Been eagerly awaiting this one for a very long time, as of every football fan out there. It's felt like a long off season. But luckily we got the pre-season this year, a little bit shorter, which was nice. We got a chance to see some of the rookies play, some of the starters play, and I think it's really set us up for a big season. Last year was a bit of a weird one, with COVID.
Ruining it for everybody.
Indeed. So we didn't get to see too much of that. So this week we got the pleasure, and it was a bit of a pleasure, to watch the Buccaneers play the Dallas Cowboys. And to be honest, from my perspective, the game went a little bit differently to how I thought it was going to going in. What about you, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely thought that the Bucs were going to beat the brakes off the Cowboys. And as a Giants fan, I'm a little bit upset they didn't. The Cowboys look good. Well, the Cowboys offense looked very good. Their defense is still bad. But I think Dak's obviously coming back off a bad ankle injury, and he was meant to have a shoulder injury. However, throwing the ball 60 times last night, I don't think his shoulder's that bad.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah, but no, I think it was a good game. It's a great game to start off with, loads of points, 60 points. Yeah, it's just a good way to open the season. I think it's going to be tough for some of the teams, some of the other games to follow this.
Yeah. I was pretty shocked, to be honest. I definitely pegged the Buccaneers to beat the Cowboys by double digits. What was the final score?
31-29, I think.
31-29 to the Bucs. I mean, it was a good game, entertaining for those who are listening from the UK and maybe not too familiar with the NFL. It's a good game to watch to really just break you into this season. A lot of touchdowns. I think there was 7 touchdowns, about nearly 800 yards between the two quarterbacks. There wasn't a lot of defense, really, was there?
No. I think both defenses played pretty poorly. I mean, there was a couple of interceptions and stuff, but a lot of them were. One was a Hail Mary, one was a tipped ball, and Dak threw into some triple coverage for some reason.
As it does.
It was a good ball, actually. I think CeeDee Lamb should have caught it, but yeah, no, it was good. I think the Bucs the Cowboys had a good game plan where they were trying to avoid the front 7 of the Bucs is pretty savage. So Dak was getting the ball out his hands quick. A lot of throws towards the sideline. Hardly ran the ball at all. Just trying to avoid them monsters that the Bucs have got.
Yeah, I thought that Zeke didn't get hardly any touches, did he?
No, I think probably 10 rushes.
Yeah, that's crazy for a Cowboys.
His longest run, I think, he finished with about 40 yards.
Yeah.
I think his longest run was about 13 yards. Not a great day for him, but I mean, there's a lot of positives for the Cowboys to take away from it. But I mean, everybody knew they've got a great offense. They've got 3 probably number 1 wide receivers who would be number 1s on another team, and then Dak's not scared to throw the ball.
No. Yeah, I think for everyone listening, this is probably difficult for Dave to swallow. He's not.
I mean, it's good. The Cowboys lost at the end of the day, so it's if the Giants pick up the win on Sunday, then we're laughing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, both not a fan of the Cowboys, to be honest, but doesn't deter anybody who is a fan to listen to the podcast. But they are going to catch catch some shit as we go through this podcast. But in terms of performances, any major stands out for you?
Yeah, well, you got to say Dak for the Cowboys. Like I say, he had a good game. He took care of the ball pretty well. He's moving in and out of the pocket, which is good to see for a Cowboys fan and an NFL fan. Really, you don't want. They've got no backup there, so they got rid of Andy Dalton, who went to the Bears. So Dak's kind of on his own. So that you didn't kind of know what we were going to get coming off such a bad injury. He's not played at all really in the pre-season. So he's come out looking as good as he's ever looked, to be honest. So I'd say for the Cowboys, probably Dak.
Yeah, you see, from my side, I'd say as much as obviously he had a great game, and he obviously did, Dak played far beyond what I expected him to play, and what, far beyond the calibre that I thought he'd come back after an ankle and a shoulder injury. But from my perspective, I think it was the receivers that did him such a service. Amari Cooper looked fantastic, catching everything, and he was covered up quite nicely. He just runs electric routes, and I think I saw some clips in the off season of him just burning people in practice, and he put it into play in that game yesterday. I think that just gives the Cowboys a different type of attack than what they're used to. Like, I'm used to sitting here and watching the Cowboys just run and pound it down people's necks. They've got a powerful offensive line, of which there was a couple of injuries last night that kept Zach Martin was out the game, wasn't he?
Yeah. So he's in the COVID protocol. I think his backup is as well. So I expected the Bucs D line to do some damage to get hold of Dak. I think they sacked him a couple of times, but the Cowboys offensive line it's aging, it's getting old, but it was they protected him, which is if you're going to throw the ball 60 times, you want good protection, and he definitely got that.
Instead of standout performances for me, I'm going to go the other way and say like some of the disappointing performances. As you just mentioned there, I think maybe credit is where credit's due to the offensive line of the Cowboys, but I expected to see way more sacks from the Bucs. I thought JPP would get there. Shaq Barrett equally was pretty tied up for a lot of the game. Towards the end of the game, Vita Vea definitely made his presence felt. He's a big dude.
He's a wrecking machine.
And he came tumbling through towards the end of the game. There must have been some fatigue there for the centre. I know I'd have been tired if I was trying to block that bloke. But for me, it was the Bucs secondary that did not look impressive. I think of all the positional areas on the pitch for both teams, I think the Bucs corners looked the worst, and I don't know whether that's because of the calibre of the receivers at the Cowboys or whether it's a bit of both. But they just kept getting torched. They had over 100 yards penalties. It was pretty bad. It was pretty difficult to watch at times, just because the Cowboys just seem to be having their way in terms of through the air anyway. And why would you run it if it's coming off that easily? I think CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup all just look like they could all be contenders for the number one spot. But then you've got Amari Cooper, so it's they're a tough team to handle. I think if you've got a team that's got a reasonably good secondary, you can maybe stifle the Cowboys. But if, like the Seahawks, you're struggling at corner at the moment.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah, they could end up being torn up.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Amari Cooper had 139 yards of 13 catches. CeeDee Lamb had 100 yards as well. So yeah, they put a day up the pair of them. Good fantasy day. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think you're right. The corners for the Bucs don't normally need to be that good, because the quarterbacks are getting the ball out quicker, so they're very rarely getting beaten down the field because there's such a savage pass rush coming at them. But last night it was pretty much non-existent. Just saying there, one sack, that was it. Yeah, I know there was good pressure from Vita Vea straight up the middle. But no, I think that they didn't have a good day, and someone else didn't have a good day. He's Greg the Leg, Greg Zuerlein, the kicker for. He had an absolute mare
for the Cowboys.
Yeah, missed a field goal and an extra point, close as well, like a 31 yard field goal, I think it was. Missed it way left, pulled it way left, and then missed a 60 yard field goal attempt at the end of the end of the first half.
I mean, that's fair, isn't it? 60 yards is a long way to kick.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, that's a coaching issue, because that puts you don't want Tom Brady on the halfway lines with the ball with 40 odd seconds left or whatever.
No.
Fortunately, I think he went 3 and out on it.
I think he threw a Hail Mary, didn't he?
Yeah,
got picked off.
Yeah.
We haven't spoken much about the GOAT, but might be worth just bringing him into the conversation. We've done a fair bit of Cowboys talk, but I mean, one thing that stood out to me from the start was how composed he looked. He just looked like it was, same old Tom Brady. He just was unleashing balls, throwing quick slants, throwing deep balls. That deep pass to Antonio Brown looked like pure perfection, landed right in front of him.
Yeah.
Antonio looked great as well, considering previous issues. He's definitely a talent to add to that roster, and put him with Godwin and Mike Evans. Although Mike Evans had a few oil slicked hands last night, they've got a solid receiving core, and especially with Gronkowski as well. Him and Brady just look to be on the same page constantly.
Yeah, they had a great day yesterday, and I think he had a deep ball that was dropped by Godwin as well. Brady did. So yeah, Brady is clinical as ever. He's surgical with that ball, especially when his Dyson defense is up. The new Cowboys linebacker Micah Parsons was on the island a lot last night. Like, Brady was just picking him apart. Play action had him running as if he bit on the run, and then Brady would just drop it in behind him to Gronk or whoever it was behind him, and just absolutely didn't have. I don't think he had a great day, to be honest, Micah Parsons, but when you're going against the GOAT, it's difficult.
Yeah.
He can. He knows so much.
What was it that you were saying to me earlier? I think you were mentioning that on that last 1 minute play that Brady had to get down the field to kick a field goal. You were saying that he was ignoring the play calls of the.
That's right. So he was getting the play calls going through the helmet, and then turned to the sideline saying no. And he obviously changed the play at the line of scrimmage and just got him basically within sort of 30 yards, and then just threw the ball away 3 times to drain a bit more of the clock.
Yeah.
And then they obviously kicked the winning field goal. It was a lot closer than what I thought it was going to be. It was a very good game.
Yeah. I mean, that's surgical though, isn't it? Like, with Tom Brady telling no to the coaches, picking his own plays at line of scrimmage. You're never going to argue with Brady in that scenario. But even little things like that, the tosses out of bounds that he, just to drain every last second off the clock. As much as you're watching it thinking, some people might be thinking, oh, why is he doing that? Why is he doing that? But when you know exactly that in American football, if there's 15 seconds left on the clock, there's still a chance.
Yeah, that's at least two, maybe 3 Hail Marys.
Yeah.
Assuming they're not picked off.
And he just got rid of that just by tossing the ball away.
Left him with 2 seconds on the clock to get to attempt a Hail Mary at the end, and it's just
he looks great. He looks in mid-season form, and to be honest, some of the throws that he was making, because they pressured him a little bit, but there was one throw, I think it was in the first quarter, he got rattled a little bit and fell off his feet and dropped just an up and down perfect pass that just went up and then down into Antonio Brown's hands just over the cornerback. And you just thought, he's still got pure arm talent. It's not just in his head. I mean, he puts the balls where he wants them.
Yeah, he could have been. I don't know if that's the play, but he could have been picked off on the one where he was stumbling and it was a bit of a rookie throw. He threw it, and Micah Parsons very nearly came up with a pick. Yeah. And that was probably going back to the house, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. So big plays. Obviously had the many turnovers, which is unlike the Buccaneers, really. I don't know whether that says something for the Cowboys defense, or whether it was just some teething errors getting back into the season. But they had 4 takeaways, was it, the Cowboys? 4 or 5? I think it was 4.
They had 2 picks,
2 fumbles,
2 fumble recoveries.
Yeah. So I mean, that's always a tough differential. I read something earlier, I think, which was the Buccaneers broke a record last night. They're the first team in NFL history to lose the turnover differential, have more than 100 penalty yards in a game, and still win the game, which is, that's
unbelievable. I mean, like I say, it could have gone either way. The Bucs gave the ball away so many times, and the Cowboys just couldn't capitalise. I mean, they left points on the table with both the turnovers and then the missed field goal from 31s. that shouldn't be happening. Not for Greg Zerl. I know he's coming off an injury, and I don't think he's kicked a lot, but yeah, you can't believe it. You can't. That's the difference. I mean, that one field goal was the difference between them winning and losing.
Yeah, totally.
On the points wise, anyway.
And Mike McCarthy doing his same old stuff. I remember it was a fair few years ago now, but it was the Seahawks. Seahawks were playing the Green Bay Packers, then coached by Mike McCarthy, who's now the coach of the Dallas Cowboys, and it was in the playoffs, and the Packers were marching down the pitch, and they'd get to the 5-yard line. They were stopped, and he was kicking field goals in the playoffs, and in the end, it meant that they didn't win the game because they weren't going for the 6 points, they weren't getting the 7 points, touchdowns. He was playing it very, very safe, and he did the same thing last night. The Cowboys kicked from their own from the Tampa Bay 3-yard line, kicked a field goal from the 3, and you're playing against Tom Brady. It's not the way to win a game, is it? It's not showing any kind of, like, number one, it's not showing any kind of actual passion in your offense, and number two, it's just a very reserved way to play the game of football when you're playing against the best quarterback in the NFL at the moment. So I think that those little tiny things from a coaching perspective could have maybe done, all the difference. Less kicks, more touchdowns.
Did you say Brady's the best quarterback in the NFL?
Well, I did, yeah. I mean, is he? He's the best quarterback of all time. Currently, I don't think he's the best quarterback in the NFL, but
Daniel Jones is.
Daniel Jones. Yeah, Daniel Jones. If he was wearing,
he
was wearing Russell Wilson's boots,
I have nothing bad said about Daniel Jones.
But yeah, so there was a bit of COVID affecting that game, wasn't there? So there was the Star Centre for the Cowboys. But that's an interesting theme for the year, isn't it? And I think it's a relevant topic for fantasy, for those who've already done a fantasy draft, players that have not been vaccinated, or just the potential of having a deep bench and some potential reserves in case the COVID protocol hits, because it can take any player out at any time, can't it? And it's a bit savage because imagine Seahawks losing Russ to some COVID protocol or whatever. Yeah. It's not nice.
No, I think. Yeah, you're right. It's Zach Martin's one of the top. He's a Hall of Fame guard. I think he played a bit of tackle last year as well because he had so many injuries. But yeah, it's not what you need. And I think I know the Bucs are 100% vaccinated, and there's quite a few other teams that are. It just ruins your chances. If you've not got a good backup and your quarterback goes down. It's so difficult to win games, and some of the schedules that teams have got, you've just got to look. And I think we were talking about before some of the quarterbacks that aren't vaccinated. So Kirk Cousins not vaccinated, Carson Wentz. If the best ability is availability, Carson Wentz has got to get he's got to be a 5 out of 100. He can't stay on the pitch, whether he's constantly getting injured, and now I think he was coming off an injury, and now he's got a foot injury, hasn't he? Yeah, bone in his foot or something. Yeah, and it's just not worth the risk, I don't think. And if you're vaccinated, I don't think you need to do as many tests to get out of the COVID protocol as well if you're not vaccinated. So there's a lot of players, I think, that are just. I mean, it's their own personal preference, I suppose, at the end of the day. But I think there was a lot of talk about. Why players were released. Was Cam Newton released because he's not good enough? He wouldn't be a backup, even though he's come out and said he would happily be a backup. Or is it the fact that he's not vaccinated, and the fact that he had COVID last year and he's had it this year, missed some training camp? I just don't think it's just a risk that I'm glad majority of the Giants players, I think we're at 90% are vaccinated, because it's just, and all the big stars are vaccinated, so it's less of an issue, but. It's just not worth the risk. No, definitely not. I'm hoping that. We play the Colts week 1. Seahawks play the Colts week 1 this Sunday, 6:00. I'm not too sure whether I want Carson Wentz to play or not, to be honest, because he's been garbage in the last couple of years. But he's got the potential to flare at times. But I'm hoping that he's not available, just so that we can jump in and trounce the Colts. But I think if he does play and he can play, pre-Carson Wentz 4 years ago status, he gives the Colts maybe a better chance than Phil Rivers did. But looking forward to this
this season coming. We've got a fair few games on the horizon for Sunday. But let's talk about us for a little bit, Dave. Why not? Let's seeing as though we're on the mic, let's hog the mic. So I got a couple of questions for you, really. One would be, so for the listeners out there, Dave is a New York Giants fan, and he's obviously hoping for big things this season, Saquon coming back, etc. But what are your expectations for this year, Dave? Realistically, with the Giants, what are you hoping to see, and what are your expectations in terms of wins and losses?
We're going to the Super Bowl. That's No, I think
Super Bowl.
Yeah. I think realistically, we've spent obviously a lot of money in the off season, bought in Kenny Golladay.
Great signing.
Yeah, he's a true number one, and that's what we were lacking. I think since Odell left, I feel like we were lacking that true number one. And hopefully, with him there, Slayton, who had a good rookie season, then he had a bit of a down season last year. Hopefully, he can bounce back and he can do some bits on some of the, he's a good deep threat.
It's a perfect situation, really, because he was being asked to be a number one, wasn't he?
Yeah,
but now he's going to be a perfect number two.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard's looked great in training camp. Kadarius Toney, I think he's had a couple of injuries, but he's good to go for week one, so I'm happy about that. I want to see what he's making. And then obviously the big news is Saquon coming back, and Saquon playing. He's such a dynamic sort of playmaker that you have to consider when you're playing against the Giants. You need to consider him. So do you load the box? If you load the box and you're leaving the likes of Golladay, Shepard, Slayton, Toney, Ross, Kyle Rudolph, Evan Ingram, all these really good skill players that we've got, you're leaving them one-on-one. And then if you don't load the box, then you've got the issue of Saquon breaking away for a big one. Yeah.
If he comes back true to form, it just gives your offense a totally different feel, doesn't it?
I think so. And the ACL is such a weird injury that people can come back or they don't come back. Like hopefully as sort of an Adrian Peterson, not necessarily MVP season.
It's a big statement, but
I'd be, you know what I mean? I'd be happy with sort of 1,500 rushing yards, sort of 2,000 from scrimmage.
Yeah. No big expectations.
Well, they're the numbers he put up in his rookie year, season. So to win rookie of the year. So hopefully Saquon come. I mean, the defense, like you know me, I'm all about the defense. Love a bit of Blake Martinez.
Love that D.
Yeah. I think we've got very strong, bringing in Adoree Jackson as sort of the second cornerback. We've got Xavier McKinney, Logan Ryan playing sort of the free safety role, Julian Love and Jabril Peppers playing strong safety. We brought in Danny Shelton from the Patriots, I think he came from.
Yeah, D2.
Because obviously it was Dalvin Tomlinson to the Vikings, but the issue was, do we keep Tomlinson or do we keep Leonard Williams? But no, I think our defense is obviously a strong point. I think that's something we have in common with the Washington football team. I nearly called them by the wrong name now. The Washington football team. And I think our only downfall is our offensive line. It's not looking good. It looked absolutely awful against the Patriots. They ran all over it. And this will lead me into another segment later on. But I mean, I'm just praying that the offensive line holds up. And if it does, and Daniel Jones has got the time to throw, he was proven last season, in his rookie year, that he can run an offense as long as he's got the protection.
Yeah.
He's got all the skill pieces in front of him now, and it is a make or break year for him. Hopefully, he can take that Josh Allen leap in year 3. His numbers in year 1 and 2 are actually better than Josh Allen's in year 1 and 2.
Right.
And he actually led the NFL in deep throwing, deep passes last season. So there's definitely
some positives in there for Daniel 100%. Jones.
And I think hopefully, as long as the offensive line can keep him standing long enough for him to get a ball out, he's got the pieces around him now to hopefully win this division, and that's what I expect. And
is that your expectation? Is that top of the division?
Yeah, after seeing the Cowboys defense last night, I don't think you can win with just a good offense. You need both, and the Cowboys definitely haven't got that. The football team have got the great defense. Yeah, they've got Fitzmagic, who's never been to the playoffs. So hopefully, the Giants can sort of win. I'm thinking like a 10-7 will win the NFC East. I think that's all you're going to need to be.
I think 10-7 would comfortably win the NFC East.
And I think the games that we've got a tough stretch in the middle where we've got the Chiefs and the Bucks. But we always play the Bucks pretty close. Even last year, it took a very dubious picked up yellow flag for the Bucks to win. So I think we've got what it takes to hopefully win this division.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I wouldn't say your expectations are low, considering the amount of yards you want from Saquon, but I think definitely possibility, and probably more of a probability. For me, the Giants' strength is their defense. Obviously, that's a bit scary to look at the players that you've now got on there. Your secondary is pretty savage. You always seem to get pressure. I think that comes down to coaching and having massive Leonard Williams at the front. So I think, it's the prove it year for your man, isn't it? For your QB.
He needs to prove it.
Yeah, he needs
You're
to
listening, prove it.
If you ever listen to this podcast, prove Dave right, because he loves you. But no, it's good. I mean, if you can get 10 wins, I think that does win your division, and that takes you to the playoffs, which would be a nice thing for the Giants after a little bit of a drought.
Yeah, it's telling me.
So
what about the Seahawks? Tell me what your expectations are for the mighty Seahawks.
The mighty Seahawks. I mean, so obviously if I'm already caught on, guys, I am a Seahawks fan. Jersey's on. But, so it's a difficult year for the Seahawks, really, from my perspective, just because our division, the NFC West is so loaded.
Yeah, it is.
Every team could win the division, arguably, on paper. The weird thing is that we won it last year. We won the division last year, and apparently we're now the underdogs in the division, which I think is just a strange concept, but it's actually one that I quite like.
You had a better record than the Bucks.
Yeah, we did, but we didn't get to the Super Bowl or anywhere near. But that, I think, for me, for the first time for a long time, being a Seahawks fan, I feel a bit better about that. Like, there's something nice being an underdog. Maybe expectation not being quite as high. Do I think, that we've got it in us to win the division this year? I'm optimistically gonna say I think we've got the potential to do so. I think I have to be realistic and look around at what else is in the division. I think the Rams, with Matt Stafford at the helm, could potentially be lethal. Their defense is unbelievable, driven by Aaron Donald. But from a Seahawks perspective, we've got a lot to be excited about. We've made some, I think, under the radar moves in the off season. We've acquired Gabe Jackson, who is a very, very solid guard from the Raiders via trade. And everyone has been banging on about making sure that Russell Wilson is kept protected so that he can work his magic. And, he's one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the NFL year in, year out, partly to do with the garbage offensive line that we've had for a few years, partly to do with the fact that, that's part of his game. He escapes the pocket. It's what he does. But he tends to make it work more often than not. So obviously I've got no worries at quarterback. We've got one of the best in the game from that perspective. And then our whole offense really looks good. We've got massive emerging talent coming from DK Metcalf. 1,200 plus yards last year. Whether he can match that again is going to be tough. It's a tough ask, but I think that he absolutely can. Mixing him with Tyler Lockett, two very, very different receivers, but two lethal receivers in their own right. I think that gives us a lot of power on offense. That's going to be tough for defenses to keep hold of. We've acquired a new tight end from the Rams, Gerald Everett, who is a lot more athletic than Greg Olsen, who was older than God's dog. But he could bring something new to our offense. And then we've kind of got what we've always had in the backfield at the moment. Running back isn't amazing, but Chris Carson can get the job done. I think from my perspective, my biggest worry is the defense for the Seahawks. We've obviously got two major pieces on defense that we've spent a lot of money on. We've got Bobby Wagner and Jamal Adams. Bobby Wagner, linebacker. Jamal Adams, questionable safety, more like a linebacker. But outside of that, we're pretty thin. We don't have many what you'd call top-tier corners. So it's going to be an interesting one. I think that we're going to be in a lot of shootouts throughout the year. I think we're going to have to put up a lot of points. Luckily, we've got a team that can put points up. and we're just going to have to see how it goes. But our division is so heavily stacked. You know, you've got savage defenses. The Rams' defense is arguably one of the best, if not the best, in the league. The Niners' defense, when healthy this year, is going to terrorize quarterbacks. You know, they're going to pass rush. They're going to get there. And then even, you know, you throw Cardinals into the mix. You know, added JJ Watt, arguably not the JJ Watt that was, you know, 5 years ago, but he's still going to be a presence on that defensive line. And they've got some pieces there as well, the Cardinals. I don't really like the way that Murray plays, but it is what it is. He can definitely put points up. So it's going to be a tough one. I think for me, I just want to see our offense put points up. I don't think my expectation is high with defense. I think that we are going to get scored on. It's time to let Russ really fly. A bit of a balanced run game. We've got a new offensive coordinator from the Rams, hopefully going to be a bit more dynamic than what we've seen in the past. Give Pete the Meat, a little bit of juice in his legs. He's the oldest coach in the NFL, to be fair to him, so he needs a bit of something sprightly. But yeah, I think we could win 10 games. I think we could win maybe 11 games and make the playoffs. But then the playoffs is a different beast, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think from my perspective, you were 12-4 last season. You've only really lost your corners. Like I don't understand why they're looking at all the people when they're doing like predictions of so the so-called experts doing their predictions on where you guys are going to finish. The Rams have added Matt Stafford, who is clearly a better playmaker than Jared Goff. He's a lot more. He's got one of the top 5 arms in the league. Very, very good player. The Niners, you don't know what you're getting with them because you don't know what Jimmy G's obviously got a very good record, but how long are they can play Jimmy G for before, and how long is he going to stay healthy for? He's always injured. Bit of Carson Wentz going on with him.
Trey Lance looks nice in preseason.
Yeah,
right?
and then you've got Trey Lance. But do you commit to a rookie? When you commit to a rookie quarterback, you can't really then go back to the veteran. And then you have the growing pains with the rookie that I'm seeing now over the Giants. And then the Cardinals, they've got AJ Green in.
Yeah,
they've got DeAndre Hopkins. Yeah, they bought JJ Watt in. So they've got very good playmakers. But the issue with them is, can Cliff Kingsbury coach? You know, he's the issue. The reason with them, I see them finishing bottom. I think it will be Rams, Seahawks, Niners, and then the Cardinals last.
I'd take that.
But I think the issue with your division is that the top 2 could comfortably make the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't think you've got to look at like the Saints. What the Saints going to be this year? They free up a space if they don't get. You know, it's you don't.
Do you reckon the Saints won't make the playoffs?
You just don't know what James Winston's going to do, do you? Because he's 1 minute he can throw the ball down the field, but he's not scared of throwing 30 interceptions, is he?
No.
So that costs your team. You throw 30 interceptions, that's 30 scoring opportunities that you're no longer having.
Fair play. Okay, who has more wins this year, Saints or Falcons?
Oh, the Saints will comfortably have more wins than the Falcons. Yeah, the Falcons are absolutely dog turd.
Fair play.
And I like the Falcons, and I'm probably higher on the Falcons than a lot of other people, but they are turd. Yeah, no, the Bucs will run away with the NFC, I think, but especially their division.
The first couple of weeks is going to be it's going to be an interesting one to see how people are coming together. Before we get into that, we're going to look at some of the week 1 matchups. We're just going to take a quick break to hear from In the End Zone's first weekly sponsor, S&J Electrical. S&J Electrical, electricians from Nottingham. They are NIC, EIC approved contractors for all your electrical home needs. They work commercial, domestic and industrial. One of my real good friends leads this operation. If you need anything doing, big or small, in your house, reach out to S&J Electrical. We'll be dropping a link in our bio. If you need to reach out, they've got a website too. And there you go. S&J Electrical. Give them a ring, give them an email. Any time of night, later the better.
He appreciates the early morning call.
So anyway, back to what we'll consider week one. Obviously, we've already had one game, which actually probably was a better game than we expected. I'd be hard pressed to put it outside of one of the top games of the week if we have.
It's going to be a barn.
Yeah, so if we have any more games like that, it will be a hell of a week one. But what we thought we'd focus on this week is, for our British listeners, we'll focus on Sky Sports. So, access to the NFL is pretty limited in the UK, albeit it's become a lot more accessible over the last few years with Amazon Prime taking over some of those game coverages. And if you are diehard fans like myself and Dave, then you probably pay many, many pennies for the NFL Game Pass, which I will happily pay until the day that I rest. But if you don't and you pay for Sky Sports, then there are still some pretty good games that you can watch. We're going to just talk about them really, really quickly. Maybe just give you an idea of which games to watch, because you can't watch them all, or if you can, you'll be spending about 16 to 20 hours watching football, which I would be perfectly happy with. Dave, what about you?
Yeah, couldn't be more happy sitting and watching football all weekend.
But if you don't generally watch it, I'd say we'll give you a couple of games to switch on and watch. So what games have we got on Sky Sports this week, Dave?
So the first one is the Steelers versus the Bills, the Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Buffalo Bills.
It's a good game.
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. I mean, the Steelers' defense is 21 savage.
Mm-hmm.
It is a bad man. They've just paid one of their outside linebackers a lot of golden pennies.
It's a record deal, isn't it?
Yeah, for a defensive player. Yeah, he's the highest defensive paid player.
Wow.
And he is a savage, to be fair to him. TJ Watt. So they paid him, and it'd be interesting to see what the Bills have got. Obviously, Josh Allen, who's a very mobile quarterback. He's like 6'6". He's a big dude, and he's got an absolute cannon of an arm on him.
He has got an arm.
So it'd be interesting to see how they can move him around in the pocket or push him outside and see how the plays develop. So it's basically a very good offense led by Josh Allen and sort of Stephon Diggs versus a very, very strong defense. The Steelers' defense is actually really, really strong.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the top defenses in the league, which is why I picked it up in my fantasy. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a battle of the defense versus offense, isn't it? I think it's probably best place for Josh Allen because he's mobile. He can maybe evade some of those pass rushes from the Steelers. But I think for anybody listening who might fancy giving that a watch, you've got two potential playoff teams here playing each other. I think the Bills will definitely make the playoffs. I think the Steelers can do if their offense ticks over. So I think you'd be treated to an actually entertaining game of football if you watch the Steelers and Bills. Fair few points to be had on offense and defense. A lot of sacks if you like to see a little bit of a bit of damage on the quarterbacks.
Yeah, and it's potentially Big Ben Roethlisberger's last season. So
yeah.
If you've not seen him before, it might be worth just watching on to see. Yeah, like a future Hall of Famer, probably first ballot Hall of Famers, sort of last year, potentially. I mean, he's not said he's not coming back, but
he's getting on.
Yeah, and they drafted Najee Harris, who's a
exciting.
He's got potential to flash in the running back game. So it'll be an interesting game.
Yeah, there's a lot of good things to watch there. The next game on Sky Sports is the Bears-Rams.
Yeah.
That's the Chicago Bears playing the Los Angeles Rams. I'm a little bit down on that game. I'm not really feeling that game. Just number one, because I don't like the Rams because they're in my division. But number two, I don't think the Bears offense have got a lot to offer at the moment. So I feel like it's a trounce. I feel like it's the Rams defense suffocating the Bears. But that's just my opinion. I think, in terms of why you should watch the game, if you want to see a very physical defense, very physical, game in the trenches, then definitely watch that game. You've got two absolute elite pass rushers. One probably one of the best of all time in Aaron Donald on the Rams, defensive tackle, and on the Bears you've got Khalil Mack, who arguably will go down as one of the better pass rushers of all time. So there's a lot of defense to be had in that game. What about the offense, Dave? Anything on offense that you want to see?
Yeah, so you've got So you've got Andy Dalton. So Andy Dalton moved across from the Cowboys. He was backing up Dak last season, and then got a lot of playing time because Dak went down. He then went down with a concussion. But he I think he led them to a third. They finished third in the NFC East, which I was very happy about. But so the question is he the answer in Chicago? Chicago, they drafted a new quarterback. So is Justin Fields the future there? He obviously is the future, but like the question is sort of like, when will he get in? And if Andy Dalton stinks the place up,
which he could.
Yeah, I mean he's a slightly above average. Back in the, he took the Bengals to the playoffs a couple of times, but he's a backup. You know, he's not a.
I'd be playing Justin Fields straight away.
I think I would. Yeah, Andy Dalton's very much a pocket passer. He's not mobile. I mean, he can run in a straight line like any human, and he can get them first downs. But Justin Fields is so much more of an athletic quarterback. Very, very, very sort of similar role at the pocket, like a Russell Wilson kind of player. He can just extend plays, whereas Andy Dalton can't.
Yeah.
If Aaron Donald's coming down your neck, Andy Dalton's going to the floor. Whereas Justin Fields has that ability to roll out of the pocket and extend the play with his legs or with his arm.
That's why I'd be playing him, to be honest, against that type of a defence. I'd be 100%. Playing him just to say, right, go on, get out there, run around, and if you can get away from Aaron Donald, then you might be able to make a play, because Dalton is not getting away from him.
No, and of course they've also got MVP, haven't they? They've got
Nick
Foles backing up the backup.
MVP.
So Nick Foles, I mean, if I was them, they paid him a boatload of money. They paid Dalton money as well. I'd be trading Foles to somewhere like the Cowboys, get him a backup job there, and just, or even to the Eagles, back to the Eagles, you know, because they don't know what they're doing there. But yeah, so the quarterback situation in Chicago is very interesting. I think that would be a good game to, because like I say, if Andy Dalton stinks it up, they need to put Fields in.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they're going to give him four or five games, Dalton, and then he'll be out.
Yeah.
And then, like we said before, Stafford. So the Detroit Lions traded Matt Stafford to the Rams, and they got Jared Goff in replacement, which is definitely not a replace, definitely not an upgrade. It's an upgrade in LA. Matt Stafford he's very arm talented. He's just never really peaked. He's always kind of just plateaued at the level he was at.
He's always had a bad defense.
Yeah, I mean, the only time when he had Megatron in Detroit, he was putting numbers up, but the Detroit team is always kind of just been a bit of a pump team, to be fair. So now he's got good weapons in LA. He's got good receivers. Cooper Kupp.
He's very dynamic.
Woods. Woods is there as well. Yeah. They've just traded for Sony Michel. They've got some good weapons in LA, and like I say, their strength is obviously the defense, but their offense is also very very strong. I think, and that's the reason ultimately I think they'll win.
Yeah.
NFC West.
Yeah, same. Cool. There's two more games on Sky Sports. Next one is the Ravens Raiders, which again is probably not the best of the selection, but it's still an interesting one to watch. Some unfortunate news that broke yesterday in regards to the Ravens, the Baltimore Ravens. They have just been plagued with injuries this off-season, and they only got worse yesterday. So yesterday, 2 players went down, did they not?
Yeah. So I think J.K. Dobbins. No.
That was last week.
So Gus Edwards and Marcus Peters both went down yesterday, both with ACLs. J.K. Dobbins had already been down with an ACL, so that's basically their second corner. I mean, Peters catches everything, doesn't he? He's a bit older now, and like it's a bit worrying to think that the ACL could be the end of him. You know, he's not young. So that's an issue for him. The 2 running backs are relatively young, so they could probably come back from them.
But it still takes them away from this season.
Yeah, so they're gone for the season. So they picked up Le'Veon Bell, who I think is a very good signing. When he was at the Steelers, he was a very good running back, a very good receiving back, and he held out thinking he was going to get the mega payday. Nobody came. Ended up going to the Jets. Didn't work at the Jets. Then went to the Chiefs. Did he win the Super Bowl with the Chiefs?
He did.
Yeah, so he won the Super Bowl with the Chiefs, and then he then made some comments about Andy Reid, the Chiefs
Head
coach.
Yeah.
So they didn't extend him. So he's now with the Ravens, who ironically are in the same division as the Steelers. So it's a little bit of a home win for him. And then they've just picked up Devontae Freeman, who was at the Giants last year. We picked him up when Saquon Barkley went down. He had an alright season. He's nothing special. He was at the Falcons before that.
He was an absolute animal at the Falcons, a little bowling ball that went through everything, but he had I think it was a knee or ankle injury, and he came back and has never ever looked the same. He was once a real good running back. You know, you'd pick him. You'd have picked him top 5 fantasy at one point, and it's crazy to think now he's bounced around a few teams. But I think with the Ravens having so many recent injuries, like you say, the J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Marcus Peters all doing lower leg injuries in the last 2 weeks. They were all going to start. They were all going to play. And they not only that, but they're like the key elements of the Ravens game. Running backs. That's what they do. So I think that's going to be an interesting one for the Ravens. I think they're going to host a number of running backs, even though they've got Lev Bell. Latavius Murray is still out there at the moment, who would suit their type of running game quite nicely. He's a big-bodied back and he's got some wheels. So I've got a feeling that they might go somewhere. Or chuck some money at him. And then you got the Raiders on the other side, which we've kind of stayed away from because there's not a lot to talk about from the Raiders.
I'm not hard on the Raiders at all. I don't think I'm not a massive fan of Derek Carr.
No.
I think he's a top sort of 50. He's in the 15 to 20 quarterback. Well, yeah, probably 15, 12 to 20 quarterback range. I'm not high on him at all.
No.
I think the Raiders team is pretty turd, if I'm honest.
Is that a technical term?
That's my technical term.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens are absolutely dismantled. I think they're lucky that they've got what I would consider a relatively easy game. There's no easy games in the NFL, but I think the Ravens are a far better team across the board. They've got Marlon Humphrey. They've got good corners. They're strong at corner. So the Peters thing is a blow, but I think that they'll be fine with that.
Everywhere else they're pretty solid, aren't they? Their defensive line is pretty solid. Their linebackers are good as well.
Tight ends are great. They've got
good receivers.
Yeah, they've got good receivers. Yeah. And do you need an epic running back when you've got Lamar Jackson as your quarterback?
Probably he is an epic running back, isn't he?
Yeah. So it's just going to run more through him like it probably should do.
For sure. So I mean, that's a game to watch if you want to watch it. Lamar Jackson's always one to sort of keep the crowd on the edge of their seat because he is an amazingly dynamic playmaker, very very fast, and just a different type of quarterback. So give that one a watch. Or the last game is probably the best game. Well, actually, it is the best game in my opinion, and potentially the game of the week for me, which is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, that's right. The Patrick Mahomes versus Baker Mayfield. It's going to be a very good game, I think. And this, like I say, it's got to be the game of the week. We've just had the Cowboys and the Bucs, but the Chiefs Browns is going to be an immense game. The Cleveland Browns team is very, very good. Baker's a good enough quarterback to get them wins. But he's by no means their strength. They've got an absolute savage pass rush. They've got Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. They're a run heavy team. Their O line is probably it's got to be top 3 in the NFL.
They're stacked everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah,
they're stacked at corner, stacked at safety. They brought in a new corner in the draft.
Yeah, the wide receivers are very good.
Yeah, Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry. They've got 3 tight ends that could all start in a different team.
That's right. They're so strong across the board. The only place you would say they may be weak or average is quarterback. But like I say, Baker's good enough to put the ball where it needs to be, make the right decisions. He had a good year last year, got him to the playoffs, got him a win in the playoffs over the Steelers. And then obviously you've got the Chiefs. I'll let you talk about the Chiefs. I know you love the Chiefs.
I do love the Chiefs.
Mahomes.
I do love Patrick Mahomes, but I mean, I think it's warranted considering what he can do. But sort of leading on from that, I think, Dave, how you've summed it up from the Browns' perspective, I think they're a team that are, if any team is best placed to beat the Chiefs, or at least give them a run, the Browns definitely are. Pass rush always upsets Patrick Mahomes. Running the ball down the neck always upsets the Chiefs, because obviously they're a team that likes to play on offense, and if you can keep them off the field by just hammering that ball, then that is a way to beat the Chiefs. They didn't manage to do it in the playoffs last year. They actually got their ass handed to them by a secondary quarterback at the end of the game, but nevertheless they gave it a good go. They gave it a good go, and so it'd be interesting to see them both back fully healthy. From the Chiefs' perspective, I mean, I've watched them quite intensely in the preseason, but obviously there's not been too much to see. They have not played their starters for more than 2 quarters, but even so, when they have done, they just look outstanding. They just look so good. They've got so many skill positions that are just far above anything else in the NFL, in my opinion. Patrick Mahomes is by far the best quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion, just because of what he can do. He can run, he can throw the ball from every angle, at any direction, at high velocity. I am aching over Patrick Mahomes a little bit right now, but I mean, he's in all my years of watching football, he can do things with the football that I've not seen anybody else do before. Not necessarily the best quarterback from in his mind, but when he gets that right, I mean, he's already a force. He could continue to be. And having Travis Kelce, who is an animal, catches absolutely everything and anything, except in the Super Bowl. And I really think that another big season for them is coming. The fact that they're playing the Browns, they're going to have a tough task. They're going to have, in every position, they're going to have a difficult team to stop, because, like we said, their corners are good, their secondary's good, their safeties are good, their linebackers arguably have got better, from a rookie draft. So I think Mahomes is going to have his hands full, but I just think they're really difficult to stop. On defense, I would say that the Chiefs are going to struggle to hang with the Browns. I don't think that the Chiefs' defense is anything to really write home about. They can get run on at times. Hopefully Chris Jones is healthy for the Chiefs. When I say hopefully, it's because I definitely do want the Chiefs to win. I don't want the Browns to win. But I think it's going to be a good game. I think it will finish within double digits between the teams. I think it might come down to something like what we've seen last night, a field goal or something like that. But the way I see it is that you've got Tyreek Hill, who can still take the top off anybody in the NFL. There's potential room for some new blood in the receiver core of Kansas City, and so I think that we're gonna see something, a bit of a spectacle, I think, from the Chiefs and Browns. So if you've got Sky Sports and you've got the capability to watch a game, I think my recommendation would be to watch the Chiefs and Browns. You'll get to see some magic from an offense and from a defense. So. I think the Chiefs edge it in that one, but it's going to be a tight game. Cool.
Yeah, no, I don't agree, because I've got the Browns to win, because I think they're gonna pound the rock. But
okay,
it's going to be an exciting game. I'm looking forward to watching it from a sort of neutral perspective. Patrick Mahomes is obviously a talent. So yeah, we'll see what he can do. We'll see if they come out. Hopefully they don't. Neither team come out flat. I've seen a bit of the Browns, because we played in the preseason and had a joint practice with him, so I've seen that. But Baker looks all right. Hopefully he's enough to get the job done on the day.
Yeah, cool. So we're going to wind this one down now. But before we do, I think we'll make a running theme of talking fantasy. Okay, so before we finish our first introduction podcast, we best talk a little bit of fantasy. So, Dave, a couple of questions for you, just to start.
I've had a banging week this week, by the way. Gronk has done me bits, which I'm happy about. Considering I've come second to last in the last 2 years. Last the year before that.
Chasing that ring, Dave. Chasing that ring.
Yeah. Call me Antonio Brown.
That's it. Yeah. I'm not going to drop that. I've already won fantasy before, but is what it is. So, we're not going to give too many of our secrets away, but definitely delve into a bit of opportunistic fantasy players. If you can tell me what you believe to be the highest point scorers this week on offense and defense.
Okay, so for offense, I mean, the strange thing is I don't own either of these players. However, looking at the matchups, I think that these two particular people are going to have big weeks. One is going to come at the expense of my New York Football Giants, which I'm not happy about.
Oh dear.
But I still believe we're going to win.
So you're saying anybody out there who's got these players, put them in 100%?
I would say so.
Okay.
So Dalvin Cook, first of all, I know that may seem like a bit of an obvious choice, but there's a lot of running backs out there. Cook obviously had a good year last year, but they're playing the Bengals. The Bengals last year had the 29th ranked rush defense.
Right.
They
haven't got any better either.
Nope. They've probably got worse.
They definitely have got worse.
So I'm expecting Cook to run all over him. You don't know what you're going to get with Kirk Cousins. He's a very inconsistent quarterback.
Yeah.
And like I say, he's not vaccinated against COVID. So if, for example, something happens with him and he's out, they're gonna. I mean, they're a run heavy team anyway. They've got Thielen obviously and Justin Jefferson. They're both very good downfield threats, but they are run heavy. And I think Dalvin Cook is going to have an absolute monster day against the Bengals. Yeah. I think they're ranked like 25th this year. So they're ranked slightly better than they performed last year. But the Bengals aren't a great team, especially their D-line. I mean, their O-line ain't great either. But the D-line in particular, I think, is going to get beat up by the big boys in the O-line of the Vikings. They've got a bit of a sneakily savage team this year.
They have actually, the Vikings. I think they're... When we get to it in a moment, I was nearly going to pick a player from the Vikings on defense. Actually, I'll tell you about in a minute. But I think the Vikings have got a very well-rounded team for sure.
Yeah.
But their coach loves to pound that ball and just run. So Dalvin Cook, as if you weren't going to start Dalvin Cook in your fantasy league anyway.
I know, yeah. If you've got him and you're not starting him, screw your head on. Get him in there. RB1.
That's it. Defense. This is a harder one to pick, I think, because where do you go?
Yeah, so I've gone with Von Miller. Okay, he's obviously coming back off the injury, but even without him last year, the Broncos were ranked 9th in the NFL in sacks. So they absolutely smashed teams last year.
Ouchies.
Whereas the Giants gave up 50 sacks, which was tied for 31st in the league. We've let our best offensive lineman go. Okay, so Kevin Zeitler's gone now. We're brought in a few other people, but just watching the preseason, the Patriots tore as a new one. Even with some of their like Chase Winovich absolutely made Matt Peart's life an absolute nightmare. So we're a bit of a chocolate O line. Like it's just they just melt under the slightest bit of heat. We don't know what we got from Andrew Thomas. We took him early. There's so many left tackles so many tackles from that draft that are outperformed him. He was a bit of a letdown. And we're starting Nate Solder on the right side as well. So he obviously sat out last year. His kid's got some health problems, so he sat out last year. And the year before that, he was dealing with an injury, and his kid was going through a lot of hospital treatment, so he wasn't at his best. And I think Daniel Jones, he contributes to that a little bit, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about Von Miller. I think Von Miller's going to have a comeback day. I think Bradley Chubb, if Bradley Chubb plays, are going to absolutely terrorise the tackles. So expect Von Miller to have a bit of a day. I'm still hoping that Giants can pull it out of the bag. And hopefully rely on the run game. But
it's a bit of a sleeper, that one. I'd imagine a lot of people didn't take Von Miller early in fantasy, to be honest. No. You don't know I say you don't know what you're going to get, but if you get even half of the pre-injury Von Miller, you're getting an absolute freaking animal. So, which might make Jones's life a little bit difficult. But that's a good call. I would not have picked Von Miller, but good shout.
So who are you going for? Who are you going for an offense?
Offense-wise, mine's a controversial one, but I feel like it's going to happen, so I'm just going to throw it out there. So I'm saying, again, on paper you would argue that he's going to be in everybody's fantasy team, and he will be, but the matchup might not necessarily look favourable, but I think it is, and I'm going to go Alvin Kamara. They're playing the Packers, they're playing Green Bay. Last year he had a monster day against the Packers. They just could not handle him. Not in the rush game, because they can stuff the rush quite nicely. You know, they're tanked up front with Kenny Clark and the two Smiths and Rashawn Gary. But he was just catching everything, you know, like little dump-offs last year. And I think that, obviously, Jameis Winston, famous Jameis, is going to, you know, pressure's on him. You know, it's not the preseason. He loves to throw a bomb downfield, but I feel like he's going to be a little bit reserved. He's going to look for his safety nets, and his safety net's going to be arguably the best safety net in the league in the running back passing game, being Kamara. So I think that they're going to just dump that ball off to Kamara. They're going to run it down the necks a little bit. The Saints are going to play safe. You've got to probably look out for Taysom Hill as well in the running game, which might just open a few doors for Kamara. So I think that Kamara's going to have a big day. I'm predicting at least 2 touchdowns and plus 150 yards from scrimmage. So if you've got him in your team, if he's not already in, or you were scared about the Packers, don't be scared.
Yeah, I mean they were sixth last year in the rush.
Yeah.
The Saints.
So that's Kamara, and then defense-wise, I'm probably going to be a bit biased here, but you've gone for a pass rush. I'm going for a linebacker. Any shocks?
Old man Bobby. He's going for old man Bobby.
I'm going for a Seahawk. I'm going to say that Bobby Wagner has the most points on defense this week. Big Bobby Wagner. I think for the reasons of we're playing the Colts. We don't know whether it's going to be a Carson Wentz led Colts or, you know, a backup at the moment. But either way, the Colts love to run the ball. And again, they've got arguably 3 first team running backs in Jonathan Taylor, Naheem Hines, and Marlon Mack. I would say that they're going to be running the ball down our necks a little bit, and Bobby Wagner's all over that run stopping. He's just a tackle monster, tackles anything and everything, absolute animal. So I think I'm just going to go that he's going to have like 10 to 12 tackles in that game and just be plugging that run, stopping him getting on the outside. He is a bit of an old goat now, but he's still, again, in my opinion, the best linebacker in the league.
He's top 10.
Top 10.
I'll give him top 10.
Top 10. He's top 1.
Slightly behind Blake Martinez. He's nearly had as many tackles as Blake Martinez as the last couple of years.
Blake Martinez can't shine his shoes. But yeah, I'd go for Bobby Wagner. There's a potential, depending on who they've got at quarterback as well. Bobby could come up with a couple of picks. He gets a few sacks. We haven't got much pressure to be able to. We've not got much pressure to be able to bring from our defensive line. Last year it was evident we had to get our sacks from elsewhere.
Defensive line's basically made up of me, Dom, 2 of our mates, and John from down the fish and chip shop.
It'd probably be probably apply more pressure if that was the case. But you know, we had to pull pressure from Jamal Adams last year, who did a good job. We've brought some talent in, but nothing major. So I really think that Bobby Wagner is going to be going to make a statement this year. But this week, particularly against the Colts, because they just love to run that ball, and he loves to stop it. So that's my pick for fantasy, and I'm pretty sure that rounds our week up.
Yeah, we'll be sure to drop in the next podcast that we do, which will be a little bit more sort of retrospective of what's happened this weekend. We'll also let you know how these guys got on in fantasy, and he was right and he was wrong.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna play that game, are we?
Yeah, Bobby will bring his Zimmer frame out onto the field, and he might be able to tackle 1 or 2 people if he falls in the way. We'll see.
I reckon you're talking this 14, 15 point week from Bobby Wagner, I think. But yeah, so yeah, as Dave just said, then this is our introduction podcast, and so if you have listened all the way through, big thanks, massive thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Next podcast is going to be a little bit more structured. Weekly, as I mentioned at the start, we're going to go and run a On the Clock, and that's going to be a segment that we run where myself and Dave both have essentially a 2-minute drill to round up each game played this week. It may not necessarily take all of the 2 minutes, depending on how turd the game is. and we may need to call a bit of a timeout if the game was particularly exciting. But generally, we're going to do an on-the-clock 2-minute drill roundup of all the games played. We're going to hit some big news, and actually, whilst we've been talking big news, my prediction from the start of the podcast, not to gloat, but Latavius Murray has reached a deal with the Ravens, actually, considering all of their injuries. He's only being paid $2 million, is it, Dave?
Yeah,
for the year,
$2 million,
which is an absolute bargain. I wish the Seahawks would have picked him up. But we will be hitting you up next week with a roundup of all the games. So for the time being, this has been In the End Zone podcast. Thanks for joining me, Dave. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
And we'll catch all of you back here next week. Thanks very much, guys. Cheers.
Peace.